Hello, my name is Annie Paperno. Thanks for joining us. We will be going over resumes today as part of your professional correspondence. This is a really important document. So let's get started. All right. So first off, what's the number one thing we should do with a resume? Well, you should get started on it. If you have not started on your resume, now is the time. If you find a great job opportunity or an internship, you find that listed somewhere and you don't have your resume ready to go, you're probably going to miss out on the opportunity. Job openings open and close pretty quickly. You want to have your resume ready to go before you graduate, before you even start job searching. So I'll work on my resume tomorrow. False, you will start today. So what makes a good resume? I like to think of a resume as being broken into two different parts: the content, which is your skills and experience, and the format, which is your font choice and layout. One thing you want to do before you get started is research what is the standard for the industry you're working in. Speak to your professors, do some Google research, talk to some peers. If you're trying to get into a professional degree program, find out what that degree program requires in a resume. If you're working in business, if you're working in education, these all have sort of standard content and format where you want your resume to fit in. It doesn't need to be an exact replica, but you do want it to follow the standards of the industry you're applying for. So starting out, basics of a great resume for undergraduate. An undergraduate resume, if you are just starting to think about building your resume, if you're looking into getting into degree programs like med school, we're going to start out with a one-page resume. If you have publications, if you have an extensive work history, it can be 1.5 pages, but at this point, undergrad resumes, we recommend them being one page. You want to keep the layout clean and easy to read, and you're going to do that by using formatting. So you want to use bolds, italics, and underlines, but you want to use them in a system so it makes sense and it's not too complicated to look at. Another really important tip is you're going to want to create a working document that's easily edited. A lot of people are going to find resume templates online that you can download. This seems like a really good shortcut at first. The problem is a lot of the time that resume is formatted just for that information that's in that document. They may be using tables in Microsoft Word. They may have designed it in a totally different program, InDesign or Photoshop or something else that doesn't translate well to the program you're going to be using. So we recommend building your resume in Word and starting fresh. That doesn't mean you can't look at other resumes and sort of replicate the format, but we don't recommend using templates. I'll go into more reasons why we don't recommend using templates further in the presentation. Again, you want to research resumes in your industry, find out what other students, your peers are doing, what's expected in a resume for your industry you're working in. Less is more. You definitely want to keep this to one page, and you're going to use bullet points instead of sentences. And you're going to prioritize from most important to least important. So the resume should start at the top. What do you really want the employer to see first? And then go from chronological order there. Another way to really make your resume stand out is to add numbers, metrics, qualify your bullet points with numbers or metrics. And then finally, be prepared to customize your resume for each job. You can use the job description for the job that you're applying for, there's going to be a job description. This is almost like a cheat sheet for your resume. So you can actually edit your resume to reflect the job description. So using some of the keywords, using some of the terminology, that's really going to help you get noticed. Basically, employers will scan your resume. There's also a system called an applicant tracking system. That's a computerized system that's going to scan your resume. So you need to get past that scan. You need to get past that 20-second review and really get somebody to spend the time to read your resume. So here's some tips that we can do to help with that. You're going to want to make sections for your resume. We're going to have the identifying information section. Sometimes you're going to have an objective or professional summary. This can be optional. You're always going to have your education. You're going to put that up at the top. You could have relevant courses. You are going to list work or internship experiences. And you're going to list these in reverse chronological order, meaning your most recent job is going to be listed first. So again, you always want to think of what's the most important. Prioritize your information. So your school, your education, and your work are going to be listed reverse chronological order. So if you transferred from a community college to Ole Miss, you're going to put Ole Miss first with your anticipated graduation date, and then the school that you transferred from. You also have sections that could include any volunteer work, any honors programs that you're in, any hard skills like computer skills, lab skills, if you're in the sciences. So these are just some of the basic sections for resumes. And you can see these sections here. This is a standard resume that we recommend starting from. This is actually from the Career Center on campus. This is what they recommend as a starting place. So you can see there's the identifying information at the top. We've got a professional profile with bullets. We have the education in reverse chronological order. We have relevant experience and work experience. Those are separated because the relevant experience is what this person wants to get a job in. They want to get a job in marketing or sales. And the second section is their sort of part-time work that still has transferable skills, but it's not as relevant to the industry that they are applying for. Finally, they added leadership experience and their hard skills, computer skills. This is another example. If you go back to the first one, it says professional profile, and they use bullet points, experienced with using InDesign and Adobe Photoshop to create advertising and informational deliverables. So this is just another format. This person is a science major. So they decided to do a professional summary in more of a paragraph form. That's fine too. You can see that they list their education. They write out their entire degree. They don't do a BS, a Bachelor of Science. They say a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry. You want to write out the entire degree. Degree names are not universal. Schools call degrees different things. So if you just use initials or acronyms, not everybody's going to understand what that degree stands for. And you are going to want to spell out the University of Mississippi. You can leave out the, but you just need to be consistent. The university does like us to use the University of Mississippi. Do not use Ole Miss. The only time you ever want to use Ole Miss in professional correspondence is if you're referring to our athletic program, because that is branded as Ole Miss. But you always want to be professional. Ole Miss is an abbreviation. It's a colloquial term. Not everybody is going to know the term Ole Miss outside of this area. So always, always, always refer to our school as the University of Mississippi. So this resume varies a little bit from the one before. This person lists their relevant coursework, their laboratory skills, their computer skills first. So you can see that each person customized their resume in order of importance. So this person felt that their order of importance was more related to their coursework and their lab skills. So let's just dig into each section because there's rules and information kind of for each of the identifying sections. So identifying information, you're going to want to put your name. You want that bigger than everything else on the page so everybody can see it. You're going to want to add an address, maybe just a zip code. You do not want to do a street address. Street addresses, it's too personal information. That the employer does not need to know exactly where you live. You can add the city and state. That's totally fine, but just don't do a street address. That's really for safety. Second, you're going to want a telephone number. Make sure you have a professional voicemail on that telephone number. You know, just straight to the point. My name, you've reached Annie Paperno. I'm unavailable to take your call. Please call me back and I'll be happy to return your call. Just something professional. You would need a professional non-student email address. So after you leave Ole Miss, that Ole Miss Go email is not, you're not going to keep that email. It's going to expire, I think, maybe 6 months after you leave school. So if you put that on your resume and you forget to edit it, this person's not going to know how to get in contact with you. So that's really, really important. Pick a new, if you don't have one, just start over with a fresh new email that's your first and last name, maybe your first initial last name with a number. Just keep it simple. And last, if you have a LinkedIn profile, which I highly recommend, you can include that information in this section as well. So we saw before with the two different resumes that the format for a professional profile can change. You can use bullet points, you can use a paragraph, you can leave it out. This is when you begin to sort of customize it. You have to decide what are other people doing in your industry? What do you really want to put out there? So this is something that you can customize for your own experience. Education, you're going to, again, type out your school. You're going to include your GPA if it's above 3.0. You can put your, excuse me, you can put your major and your minor, and you can put your expected graduation date. And then you're going to list in reverse chronological orders. As I said before, if you had gone to a community college, you're going to do that underneath the University of Mississippi. If you studied abroad, this is also where that section would go. Okay, relevant experience. This is, sorry, this keeps getting in the way. Relevant experience is transferable skills that are related to the industry or the job that you're working in. It can be class projects, can be leadership opportunities. This is not necessarily a part-time job in an unrelated field. Let's say food service or your customer service somewhere. So you want to think about transferable skills. How did your work in the classroom with the course that you're listing, this person is saying they did a marketing project team member. How does that work represent your transferable skills that you can bring to the job you're applying for? So you want to use metrics. That's one way to make it stand out. This one says, it's just a bullet point. Distributed a research survey to 300 students at the University of Mississippi with a group of 5 other market research students. So that's a powerful bullet point. That gives a lot of information, talks about how this person knows how to create a research survey, to distribute it to 300 students. They know how to analyze it, and they know how to conduct a presentation on that research project. So it's kind of showing from beginning to end, they understand project market research. So another section can be work experience. This could be part-time jobs, full-time jobs, but in this particular example, this is not under the relevant work experience. You can have just one work experience section. Again, your resume is customized. There are rules, but you have to find ways to make it work for you. So you want to only list jobs that you've had in college, unless you strongly believe it adds to your story. If you've been working, at a dance studio since high school, you can obviously put the start dates of when you've been working there until now. But if you had a job in high school and you don't have that anymore, probably better just to leave that off. The other thing you want to think about with work experiences is how can you translate that experience into something that the industry you want to work in, the skills that they're looking for. So communication skills, leadership skills, these are all things that can transfer from your work experience into the job that you're looking to apply for. So for the bullet points, this is what I refer to as the meat of the resume. It's the content. It's very important. You really want to craft these bullet points carefully. You want to think about quality over quantity. So 3 to 5 is a great place to start. You want to use action verbs, no pronouns or periods. Again, you want to use numbers, metrics, percentages. Some questions you can ask yourself to get to that bullet point is who, what, when, where, why, and how. So who was in the class? What was the project? When did you do the project? Why did you do the project? And what were the results? So those can help you brainstorm those transferable skills. Use the past tense. So it's always going to be the past tense unless you're in that position currently. And last, you're going to use the PAR method to help you brainstorm the bullet points. It's a really neat little trick to get you a really strong bullet point. The PAR method is problem, action, result. So you're going to identify a responsibility or challenge you faced. You're going to talk about how you addressed the problem, and then you're going to say what was the outcome of that action. So here you collaborated with 3 team members to create a forecasting model that examined oil industry trends and predicted 2022 year-end results. So what was the problem to create a forecasting method? How did you address the problem? You collaborated with three team members to examine oil industry trends, and what was the outcome? You predicted 2020 year-end results. So that's a really good trick to help you brainstorm that coursework that you did, that part-time job that you did. Go back and use the PAR method to try to really narrow in on what were the skills and experiences you gained from that course, from that leadership experience, from that job experience. So resumes can have lots of other sections. Again, you're customizing it for your own needs. You can have leadership experience, volunteer, honors, clubs, laboratory skills, computer skills, certifications. Again, you want to know your industry. If you're in education, they're going to want to see your certifications. If you're going into the sciences, they're going to want to know your technical skills. So again, you're going to personalize it, but really understand the industry that you are looking to work in. All right, so we got through the content. That's kind of the tough part. The format, there's rules. Again, rules are a good way to start. And then once you kind of understand the rules, you can certainly customize it to make it fit for you. So I'm going to go over sort of the rules, but of course they can be bended. I would not say broken, but you can bend the rules a little bit. So you're going to research the industry standard for format. In the business industry, it's a very standard format. It really does not usually vary from that format. If you're in a creative industry, if you want to work in marketing, research, social media, fashion, design, art, those are that's going to be more variables for the format. And I'll go later in the presentation, I'll point out a couple of those. Again, I said this before earlier in the presentation, but you really want to create the document yourself in Word. Avoid tables, don't use templates. You really want to make it as simple as possible to edit in the future. So I recommend using tabs. Basically, you can create columns. Instead of using tables, you can create columns using the tabs. The reasons for this are, again, you're going to have to go in and edit it a lot. And the tables, when you edit everything, it shifts everything around. Also, if there's tables, the applicant tracking system may reject your resume. They may not be able to read the content of your resume. You want to use a clean, simple font. You want to make use of bold, italics, and underlines. And you want to use hierarchy. So what's the most important information to the least? You can do that with the size of the font, bolding certain things. That's going to create visual hierarchy where the eye wants to look first. Again, from an order of most important to least important. We recommend staying away from color. This is, again, is a rule that can be bended, not broken, but you can add color if you want. We do kind of recommend sticking with black and gray. Some people are colorblind and it makes reading that color difficult. If you're applying for creative jobs, the rules are a little bit more varied. So here are two different formats. These are different than what we showed you earlier when I was going over the content. These are a little less standardized. So on the left, this is a school elementary education professional resume. On the right, that is a science, somebody that's in the sciences. So they did a nice job. I think both of these look nice. The blue is definitely, if you're going to use a color, blue is a safe color to go for. I probably would not have done that. I probably would have just made everything black and white, but blue is a safe color. You can tell there's this hierarchy here. You can see columns, you can see the numbers, you can see the title, you can see the bullet points. It's all very clean, easy to read. So these are two that we don't recommend, mostly because they're including a photo. So you do not want to include a photo. If you Google resumes, how to make your resume look, more modern, a lot of the times you're going to come up with templates like this. Adding a photo to your resume is a risk of discrimination. Human resources are not going to want to know what you look like. That can really be tricky as far as discrimination complaints. The other thing I would say is, especially the one on the right, there's not a lot of hierarchy. There's a lot of information, but it's not necessarily that important, and it doesn't really mean that much. They're using these bar graphs, and it doesn't really mean that much. Visually may look interesting at first, but if you're really reading it for the content, your eye doesn't really know where to go. This person looks kind of all over the place. It's a little confusing. And then the one on the left does not include any bullet points. So it just says the date and what they did, but doesn't actually use any bullet points for content. So I did mention the applicant tracking system. And I did some research on this because I didn't 100% understand how it worked. And what I found out is that the applicant tracking system struggles to read resumes with fancy fonts, italics, tables, and also if you're saving it as a PDF, which I've always saved my resumes as PDFs. What my Google search told me is it's better to save it as a Word document, not a docx. So the best way to save it to make sure it doesn't get screened out of the applicant tracking system is just a plain Word document. You're going to want to use standard headings, education, work experience. It's going to be able to scan better. And then most important, the ATS tracks keywords that are in the job description. So it's kind of like a matching game. The applicant tracking system is going to want to see those industry related terms and acronyms that's in the job description also in your resume. So you want to customize your resume for each job description. That means you might have to go in and tweak your resume almost every time you apply. And this is why you want a really clean, easy to edit resume. So wrapping up, let's just talk about what are the do's of writing a really successful resume. You want to make it relevant to the job description. You want to use numbers, metrics to qualify and quantify. You're going to prioritize from most important to least. If you are interviewing in person, you're going to print out your resume on high quality resume paper. It's a thicker paper. Sometimes it has a watermark. You're going to, print out several copies. You don't know how many people you're going to be interviewing with. So, definitely at least 5. And then you're going to want a nice little portfolio, some kind of a professional looking binder or portfolio folder. Most important, you're going to want to proofread and let someone else critique it. This is why you don't want to leave it to the last minute. If you find that perfect job, you scramble to do your resume and you submit it, you could have proofreading errors. You could have areas that could have been written. The bullet points could have been stronger. So get somebody to proofread it. Go to the Career Center, reach out to me personally, would love to help you with your resume. Another really important part in the interview process that kind of goes beyond just the resume is clean up your social media accounts. When you're applying for jobs, that is now a pretty standard part of the process that people will look up your social media account. It's just a fact. It may not be necessarily what you want to happen, but it is happening. So I would say keep your social media accounts private. If you don't keep them private, make sure whatever's on there, you don't mind your grandma seeing. The next step after you do your resume, I would say, is to really tighten up your LinkedIn profile. If you don't have a LinkedIn profile, it's a really great time to start to get one. And at Ole Miss, Handshake is a system that the school is using to connect students with employers. So there's career fairs, informational meetings, and you use the Handshake app to register for these events. It's a way to kind of get things virtual connections, but I think it's going to last past COVID. I think Handshake is it's another platform schools are using to connect employers with students. Okay, so don'ts. Let's not use pronouns, I, me, mine. You're going to use these in your cover letter. Don't include salary requirements. You're not even at that stage yet to talk about salary requirements. Do not use a photo of yourself. That could be used in discrimination cases. No personal details like your social security number or your birth date. And finally, don't print it out on cheap paper. Again, find that good quality resume paper. So thank you for joining us. That was what we had to go over for resumes. Next week, we're going to go over cover letters and CVs, which are longer form resumes often used if you're getting into med school, dental school, if you have any publications, if you're trying to get into a professional program, you might need a CV. So we'll go over those 2 topics next week. And thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next week.